You're listening to episode 297 of the Major Issues Podcast. In this episode, we talk all about the latest modern classic from Boom Studios, The Many Deaths of Laila Starr. The Major Issues Podcast starts right now. Hello everybody out there in comic book land. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don, and if you're listening to this, you can only be here for one reason, and it's a brand new episode of the Major Issues Podcast, brought to you each and every week by ComicBookClique.com. And as always, I am never alone. Sir, if you could please introduce yourself.
It is I, Alex Garcia, aka B Rogue for days. Happy to be back. It's been too long.
It's been quite some time. We're here to take down and review, well, I guess not take down, but tackle a indie juggernaut that is leaving everybody speechless. But before we do that, wanted to catch up a bit with you. It's been a tumultuous year when it comes to comic book movies. What do you think's been going on with all this talk of superhero fatigue? Have you seen every comic book film out this year? Have you had time? What do you think about the latest offerings from Marvel and DC so far?
Well, I hate to admit it, but there is some level of fatigue going on. I know you've been talking about it the last few weeks with others, yeah. And it really just does feel that way. It feels like we need, in general, across the board, something fresh to come along, and we've had those slight tastes of freshness. I know Guardians of the Galaxy 3, was able to kind of bring its new freshness. Of course, Across the Spider-Verse was crazy. Even Mutant Mayhem was amazing, but just still not enough to get over those humps, especially with, I hate to say, with these downers that I finally got around to watching that Flash movie. So underwhelming. I did see Blue Beetle, and watching that was as much as fun as it was to see a Latin family and a Latin lead and all these things. It was just like, okay, it's Iron Man with a taste of Venom, kind of, but a little bit of Ant-Man in there, a little bit of Ant-Man, right? And these, but with that Latin spice on it. But it's still those same beats were still there. So it's just like, okay, we've seen this. We need something fresh, and this writer strike is not helping things, but at the same time, I hope it, when it does come back, it helps everybody kind of get back into gear on things, because there are still so many good stories to draw from, and so much out there, so many characters they could be doing in fresh ways that there's no reason for this fatigue. There's none. Right. I mean, I'm honestly right now really enjoying Ashoka. Coming back to that Rebels Clone Wars universe, and I like the fact that they're not just throwing an origin story at us as we're just being thrust back into the Star Wars universe. For me, I was a week-to-week watcher on Clone Wars. I did jump into Rebels late, but I'm happy I did. So then going into this series, if you're into those previous series, and even if you're not, the way the story unfolds, I'm really, really enjoying it. But after that, I'm kind of looking at like, okay, we got the Marvels on the horizon, and then what? So it should be interesting.
I mean, you got the Marvels on as far as Marvel is concerned. DC still has Aquaman 2 to put out, which a lot of people are not exactly excited for.
I actually just caught the teaser for that, maybe half an hour ago. It was in the middle of the football game.
It's brand new. That's brand new.
Yeah, I had no idea. And they're saying, I think Friday, I guess they're going to drop the official trailer. So
Oh
as
boy.
someone that did enjoy the first movie, and I'm kind of hoping I'm kind of hoping some of this stuff survives into the gunverse, as it's going to be called, I would imagine. I'm
Yeah.
hoping some of this Aquaman stuff makes it, although from all the rumors I'm hearing it's not.
It's weird, right? Because there was a time in which that didn't make or break a film, right? There was a time in which whether or not these things were connected to the overall universe, there was a time when that didn't matter. But the the way DC's been handling it has been increasingly frustrating on my end. Something that shouldn't affect how I view these things is now making me upset because I'm like, if all this is connected, you start watching these movies and like it wouldn't make sense how these things are happening if all this stuff was connected. And now the Flash, if you've seen the Flash, like you said, something's gone wrong with the timeline. But at the end of that, he's there with Aquaman, seemingly, and
Yeah,
Aquaman.
right.
Is it the Aquaman that will be with in Aquaman 2? Is there still one back where Ben Affleck is? Like none of those questions are answered. I think
Nope.
conveniently, right, so that they can take their time to try to figure it out. But in the meantime, you have a audience that is, like you said, exhausted. They're exhausted with the origin stories, and there are bigger stories. There are bigger stories out there. Um, I I guess I'm also my fatigue also comes from the fact that I hadn't been reading much. Also, that's a bit of my other bit of fuel here for this is reading new exciting stories, watching new artists and new writers jump onto the scene and watch them go from smaller projects to bigger titles, and then these epics. Um, it's inspiring seeing other people's takes on uh, long loved characters, but also jumping into some indies and watching people really find their footing in original forms of storytelling. And I haven't on the as far as the big two are concerned, I haven't really heard much rumblings of like need to read stuff. And I'm not saying that to discredit either of the two. My finger just hasn't been on the pulse in a while. Have you heard rumblings of like can't miss things going on with the big two recently?
Well, in general, no. To be quite honest with you, no. It really does feel overall like a dry period
Hmm.
in either or. It does feel a bit directionless in both universes. In DC, they did just do this whole Dawn of DC thing.
Right.
So it seems like there's this new big umbrella that they're pushing the universe of theirs forward with. It
Hmm.
seems like the big thing is the fact that the Titans are now actually the Justice League, and I think that's kind of
Right.
cool because it's showing that hey, look, the this second generation of heroes is now in in charge, and all the like the big three and the older characters are kind of doing their own things, which I dig.
Yeah.
Like Superman has been really fun. The gentleman we're about to talk about, Ram V, I believe he's got a Batman run going, or if not got one going, but he just finished it, something like
I
that.
think he's doing detective.
There it is. Okay, he's doing detective,
Yeah.
and other like the Flash is kind of doing his thing. I'm hearing so on a whole line wide, DC I hear is mostly good with this. Like I said, with this new dawn of DC. However, they did just finish this weird 2 month event called Night Terrors. So
Yes.
for long time readers, it kind of just here's this dawn of DC 2 months in night terrors for 2 months, and it's just kind of like wait,
Yeah.
what are we doing? What are we doing? What is so that kind of threw things off. But now that it's over, I'm hoping it just goes back into full swing and it allows these new books to just do their thing because I'm mostly hearing good things about a majority of these. Excuse me, about these DC books.
Okay.
over in, but at this, like, but like I say, it's still fresh. It's only now the third month of it. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like how much are you gonna, how good is it gonna be, and where is it gonna go? How, let's see what direction it goes. In the Marvel landscape, I'm a Spider-Man guy, so there's always fun stuff for me going on in Spider-Man. So if you're a Spider-Man guy, it's to me it's a good time to be reading it. But if you're not a Spider-Man guy, or you just are kind of Spider-Versed out,
Hmm.
then avoid it.
Okay.
the
Right.
the X Men are in the midst of the Fall of X, which is now the third era or part, so to speak, of the Jonathan Hickman, not so Hickman run
Yeah.
era
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the X Men now.
It's kind of
But
relinquished a bit of that now, right? Because he's doing Avengers.
no, he is
Not
starting
Avengers. What
his
is
he's bringing back the Ultimate Universe
There you go.
in
Yes. Yes.
in
Yes. Yes.
in
Yes.
Ultimate Invasion, which that has been very good. And then at the same time, he's also got this whole new thing, this new universe shattering thing going on called Gods, which
Right.
has it's been sneak peeked in a few issues so far, but we really don't know much about it. But the big premise is it's Jonathan Hickman, so
Yeah. Yeah.
you kind of got to read it. The guy has hit more home runs than not, so I'm definitely going to give it a shot. The X-Men stuff, honestly, I had fallen way out of it. I just got overwhelmed. I was not really feeling where things had been going after Jonathan Hickman stopped writing everything.
Hmm.
Uh, but now I don't know if you heard, but they kind of, there's this Hellfire slash Red Wedding thing that just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested in to see where that's going now with this whole Fall of X. So that's a bit exciting. So if you are an X-Men fan, this is the time to jump into it, I feel, and see where this final act goes. Um, Alex Packnadell, another indie writer, has just jumped onto Hulk. And if you were a big fan of Immortal Hulk, but weren't feeling what Donny Cates was doing with the character, then you're gonna like what this guy is doing with the character. He's definitely kind of ignoring everything that happened with Donny Cates, where Donny Cates turned the
Yeah.
Hulk into a spaceship.
Right. Right. Right.
So, but if you liked those horror roots, this is the time to read Incredible Hulk, because it's back to just this disgusting monstrous Hulk. So this is the time to jump back into it. If you are, it's only, I think only the third issue just came out.
Yeah. I think I
We
saw. I think I saw pages from that first one, and then it does look like a horror. It looks like a horror book.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And if you are a fan of Captain America, as well as the legendary J. Michael Straczynski, he's coming on to Captain America, I believe, starting in a few weeks. So a lot of people are excited for that, to see this brand new, fresh take by a classic creator like J. Michael Straczynski on the character. So I'll definitely be taking a shot at it. While we'll cover Spider Man, Cap, Thor. Al Ewing
Immortal
has
Thor,
just,
right?
yes, Immortal Thor. So I have not jumped on that. It's only one issue in. I'm still not totally sure what the premise is, but if you're a Thor fan, you like that immortal aspect, as well as the fact that it was Al Ewing that did it, and now he's doing it on Immortal Hulk. I mean, Immortal Thor. It's the time to definitely to check it out.
Any reason you hesitated on Immortal Hulk?
I've never been a Hulk fan,
Gotcha.
outside of Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. I really haven't read much Hulk. So when I heard this whole Immortal Hulk thing, I was kind of like, I'll read it eventually. And
Yeah.
it just eventually has yet to come. But I do definitely want to try it, because in general I do like Al Ewing as a writer.
Yeah.
It's just like the Hulk was never my guy. So, but definitely
I
would like to try it. I did try Donny Cates' Hulk for a while. It
yeah.
was meh, so perhaps eventually.
I really, really liked Immortal Hulk, but I did get a sense that the missing layer I had was being a longtime Hulk fan. Like I figure if you are, there's a bunch of it's a love letter, almost explaining every aspect and every iteration that character has gone through, which is pretty interesting. Another thing I think is pretty interesting is although the big two are constantly, in the news, their characters are the most well known, world renowned. Boom Studios has actually been kicking a lot of butt lately with some of the things that they've been coming out with. The thing we're here to talk about today comes from Boom, but they're also doing something killing the children, Berserker. What do you think about what's going on over there with Boom?
Boom Studios is booming. Like you said, you just brought
Business
up.
is booming.
It is. It is. I mean, they've been hitting a lot of home runs lately, not just with this title that we're about to cover. The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, but like as you just mentioned, titles like Berserker, which is it's basically John Wick on steroids for all you Keanu Reeves fans who want to see what it would be like if Keanu Reeves was an immortal action star who has basically been around since caveman times, then you definitely want to get into it because they are adapting it into a TV show or a movie of some kind.
Oh
So
wow.
if you do want to be on board and have that head jump start on it, I would highly recommend that right now. Oh, what was
I
the other
also,
book you
I
mentioned?
also, I also love that it's just outright not spelled Berserker. It's BRZRKR.
RKR, yeah, yeah, it's just yeah, just embraces like this is a nasty story. It really, really is. I read the first issue. I think they just finished the story, so I'd like to read it in one chunk because even though they're like these pretty, they're just action packed issues that you can just kind of flip through, and
Mhm.
so it's just him just destroying entire towns and areas. He's a one man army that can't be killed. So it's pretty gripping and gnarly to read.
Just
So
fighting
to
around
read,
the world.
oh yeah, he's it's gross. It's gross, but it's fun.
um,
It's fun. If you like that stuff, then get on it.
the other what I mentioned was something's killing the children.
Oh yeah, something that's killing the children. James Tiny in the fourth. And honestly, not as fun, but equally disturbing series. Just the idea of this person, these people going into these towns to figure out these horrible murders of children
Yeah,
and the way they have to figure it out. And then I don't want to spoil anything, but the way they have to figure it out, as well as the fact that it is this long history behind it, is very,
yeah.
very good. I think it's about 30 or 40 issues in. It's still holding strong, and it's a book I would definitely recommend you pick up.
I'm also hearing about Damn Them All. I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
Damn them all! Damn them all! There's so many
Yeah, I think
books.
it's almost sounds a little bit like it's a Constantine-esque story, like an occultist for hire detective, an occult detective,
Okay,
supposedly
okay.
uh, supposedly doing really really well over there. And then yeah, I just think that I just keep hearing about Boom in this irredeemable, all the other stuff that they've done over there.
No,
And
it's definitely
oh, and Power Rangers.
yeah, Power
Which
Rangers, right?
they've kept up Power Rangers since they've gotten the IP for that. Like they've
Yeah,
kept that interesting. They've spun out side titles and all that kind of stuff.
there is definitely tons of stuff. Yeah, they have the rights to quite a few things. If you're a fan of the Jim Henson stuff, they have the rights to all of those. Klaus, which is a fun take on Santa Claus. There's the Lumberjanes. People love that. The
Yeah.
this like Girl Scout esque stories being told. They have quite a few things. So Boom is not a Oh, Once in Future, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. Yes, wow, they are producing quite a bit of good stuff that definitely, if outside the big two, you don't want to be deal with the big two. I mean, they're just head to their website and check out the stuff they're
Yeah.
producing because it's honestly it's stuff that even I'm not real. I'm forgetting that they produce, but now looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The seasons have teeth. Wow. Yes, I didn't even realize that was Boom
It's a hell of
Studios.
a catalog
Yes,
that
yes,
they have.
definitely. Oh, and this is when I was. This is when I was remembering. We only find them when they're dead. An Al Ewing book where they they people travel to the edge of the universe to mine the dead bodies of basically like celestials,
Yeah.
but no one asks the question of, well, why are these things dead?
Yeah. How do they die and how do they get over
Yeah, but
here
everyone's
once
like,
they're dead?
we don't need to know that. We just mine
Oh
their
no.
bodies. But then one crew eventually is like, nah, man, we want to find out what's going on. Very good story. Highly recommend.
And I like Al Ewing, so I gotta check that out.
Yeah, yeah, no, the Boom Studios is definitely doing their thing.
When did the many deaths of Laila Starr come up on your radar?
When I started hearing a lot about this gentleman by the name of Ram V. Ram V has written books like Blue and Green, if I said that title properly. He also,
I
the
kept
first
hearing
time,
it other places as blue and green, and then I read it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, blue in green,
Blue and Green, right? Yes,
blue
I
and green." Yeah.
actually own it. I own it. I haven't had a chance to read it.
Okay.
But when I first, I had heard a lot about him. He wrote some vault stuff that was very good. That's another
Hmm.
publishing house that's out there that if you want to read just some really off the wall stories, highly recommend you dive into the world of Vault. So he had written, I forget the name of the book right now that he wrote for Vault. I'm trying to remember it. But yeah,
Um,
when I first heard of him was there, and then funny enough, of of all the places to really that I really was impressed with his writing was when we covered what was that we covered with DC when the Future State,
oh,
Future
Future
State.
State. Yes, 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 yes,
Well,
yes,
yes, yeah, when we did Future State, he did the Swamp Thing stuff, and I
yes.
loved it. I loved his take on Swamp Thing. It was one of the reasons I wanted to cover Swamp Thing because I was like, "Ooh, I hear this Ron V guy's good. Swamp Thing is one of my guys, so I want to see what he does with it." And that's when I was like, "Wow, this guy's really good. I this is good. This is good stuff." So reading those couple issues, it made me say, I want to really get get more into him. So that's when I said, let's see what else he's got coming out. And so he continued that Swamp Thing story. He also did a Justice League Dark series
Yep.
at as well as I want to say he did something else for DC, but then he also took over for Venom after Donny Cates, where it was him and Al Ewing, where I believe Al Ewing was doing the space stuff, the Eddie Brock story of him as the King in Black
Right.
in space, but Ram V was writing the side of what's Eddie's son's name?
Dylan.
Dylan Brock, and with him with the symbiote. While he was writing that, he also was starting to write the new Carnage stuff and basically leading up into this what's now is the Summer of the Symbiotes. And on a whole, I have really, really just been enjoying his writing. He's very verbose and very poetic. He's got this smooth charm to him that you when you read his book, you just know, oh, this is a Ram V book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the dude is exciting. And when he teams up with the right artist, like he did with this book with Filipe Andrade, it it's something so unique, something so different, something on such a whole nother level that I'm finding that I already want to read it over and over again.
Is it the These Savage Shores? Is that the Vault book?
Yes, yes, The Savage Shores. Yes, very good
Okay.
book. Very much recommended.
And I mean, it goes without saying, but this is a true example of why diversity matters, right? He's from Mumbai, India. He has a very specific outlook and perspective. It's all over this book. His faith, his beliefs, his upbringing, his culture, and you don't get that very specific flavor without different perspectives, which is why that stuff is so incredibly important. I know it sometimes feels like people say that ad nauseum, but then you get something like this, and it looks, feels, speaks different than anything you've ever read. And I think that's a testament to Ram V's work, and again the incredible artwork of Filipe Andrade.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, just the way this book starts with that splash page of Mumbai, India, with
Yeah,
these amazing colors, you're immediately being, for me at least, shown something incredibly different, and just being immersed in a world that, like, hey, I'm not familiar with this world. Like,
yeah.
for a lot of this book, I had to do some research. I had to
I
sit there
I,
and go,
I
wait,
started to as well. Yeah,
yeah, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, you're sitting there going, wait, what are they talking about? What is this? What is that? Oh, there was, it was like being given homework, but homework that I was very much enjoying, because
right.
it's fun to learn these new things and really get a better understanding of the perspectives that they're giving you in these stories.
And it almost like it makes me, as somebody who thinks way too much, think like, oh wow. So like when, I don't know, a kid in India reads a Superman comic, does he have to look up like when he goes like, oh hey, President so and so? Like they wouldn't just know, right? Like
No,
what
right?
all of
Yeah,
our presidents
definitely.
are, or cultures or holidays or any of that kind of stuff. And they're being educated by that as well. And I think it's cool that we are not forced again. We want to learn more. We want to understand more. And I think through further understanding is where you get that empathy, because you get it, you know. And I think
Definitely.
that's kind of what this is about, right? Like this is almost a story about death itself getting empathy by understanding how people on the planet sort of perceive and are affected and handle the idea of death, which I think is extremely interesting. And I love this book for its like incredibly poppy nature. It's like it knows when to get silly to lull you into a false sense of security, and the artwork is very beautiful.
Hmm.
So sometimes you feel like you are reading or watching like a hip sort of primetime drama, and then it switches over to like a psychedelic, almost existential exploration of what it means to be alive. And the way that it bounces back and forth to that, and usually ends, spoiler alert, every chapter with her dying.
Yeah,
It kind of snaps you back rubber band style to like, oh
you
yeah,
know.
this is a book,
Yeah.
you know.
Spoiler alert: the many deaths of Layla Starr.
She does die,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, I just thought the way they bounce thematically, and tonally, is cool, but it also works. I never felt like they were playing anything that was serious as funny, or vice versa. Um, it all just this is dealt with adult hands.
Yeah, I know.
Is what
I agree. I agree. It's dealt with, like I said, it's dealt with adult hands. But I liked those sprinkles of comedic aspects, because that's life, isn't it?
yeah,
Sometimes some things that you can't help but laugh at the way life unfurls, and
yeah,
that classic line, right? You laugh to keep from crying,
yep,
because that's just the way life is sometimes. So, if you're really that down in the dumps, life's gonna hopefully throw something at you that's gonna make you laugh. But knowing in that same vein, you're gonna end up crying again, and
yeah.
that's life. That's the way life is.
They literally call it gallows humor, right? This idea that you're going to the gallows, you're gonna get your head cut off anyway. Why not tell a joke or two?
There it
That's
is.
just life sometimes. So we're gonna talk about this new powerful graphic novel from award-winning writer Ram V and Filipe Andrade that explores the fine line between living and dying through the lens of magical realism. We are going to get full spoiler heavy. So if I we recommend, if you haven't decided already, we recommend that you read this book if you haven't. And even our my brief descriptions of what's going on, you need to experience this book. You really need to look through the art. I'm almost not doing it justice, but I'm going to do my best to sort of summarize what these chapters are about, and then we can kind of work back and through the art and through the themes as to what they're trying to tackle here. Ready?
Let's go.
Let's do it. So, our story starts with Yama, the Hindu god of death and justice, being canned from her job. It turns out a child has just been born that will figure out immortality, rendering Yama useless. For her tireless years of work, she'll be granted a human body and is allowed to live and experience the pleasures of being on Earth. Before she is transferred, she asks to be placed in a body near the child to be born that will defeat death. She is placed in the body of a young woman in India who died after falling from a balcony, although some say she jumped. When Yama awakens as Laila, she is in the same hospital as this miracle baby who was just born. She snatches it, intent on killing it, but realizes that she can't. She runs as fast as she can out of the hospital, only to be hit by a vehicle, dying in the process. She is revived by the god of life, who gives her another chance. She confides in him that she could not bring herself to murder a child, even if that child is the cause of her current situation. The thing is, it's been 8 years since she was hit by that truck, and that baby ain't no baby no more. Boom.
Yeah.
What a first chapter. The many different wrinkles of this story had me already like, yeah, I've got to figure out what the rest of this thing is about. But go ahead, brother. What do you think of this first issue?
I mean, like you said, like they just throw you into this world. Immediately, we're introduced to the fact that I really like the fact that they made the world of the gods into this bureaucratic, office like world where the goddess of death, she's like scrambling, she's fixing her hair, she's like on her way to meet the head god, who I believe he is Brahma. I believe he's the three-faced god in the Hindu world, and he's like, yeah, like much in the same way some CEO would meet with another business person. We're taking a different direction. We're getting rid of death. We're going to try something else. You're out of a job, and we're going to send you back to Earth, and you're going to live your life out as immortal. And it's just like, what? Like, when did this happen? Like, what?
But
what's
all very
going
matter
on?
of fact, right? Like all very
Yeah.
all
Like,
part of the protocol.
Yeah, part of the protocol. You didn't get the email, like you missed the email or something. What's going on here? And I love when they send her down and they give her the new orders the same way like somebody would be terminated. Like, her orders are: a mortal world of possibilities, a helpful guide for an extraordinary life after godhood. It feels very Tim Burton, like like in Beetlejuice.
The pamphlets.
Like, oh, this is the new life you're gonna lead in the afterlife. And so she's just freaking out, like, oh my god. She even says it in this. At one point, he's like, "Oh, you've been around for like an eternity, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, exactly. I've been around for an eternity. Now you're telling me I'm going to become immortal, and I'm going to like live a life of mortal and die, and probably get hurt and die in this miserable way. You can't do this to me. Don't do this to me, please." And she figures out a way so that she will be reborn in the same area as where this new person who's going to invent immortality is going to be born. And like, that's like, think about that mindset. The immediate reaction you have to the situation is, I'm going to kill a baby.
Yep. This is BS. And I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm gonna kill a baby. I don't think there's any proof. But where do you sit on the Laila Starr of it all? Did she jump? Did she fall?
Honestly, with the way I was looking at what was happening at the party that she was at, and the
Yeah.
way it just felt like she was carrying herself,
Hmm.
I could totally see her jumping. You know, she's a
She did
young
look
woman.
disconnected, right? Disconnected from
Yeah,
everything
she
around
just
her.
yeah, exactly. Like she just you can kind of see in her face of like, yeah, I don't like my life. I'm this young woman that's, that that classic, yeah, I'm part of life, but I'm not living life, so I'm just gonna jump out, say the hell with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can totally see that aspect of her just ending her life and now being reborn with this god entity inside of her.
Hmm.
And immediately she's just like, all right, I'm Layla Starr. And yeah, where's this baby that I have to kill now?
I'm gonna
So I
walk
can,
around and find this baby.
and I was kind of upset by the fact that the ghost, that Blink the ghost name was Mun Mun.
Yeah.
She meets a ghost, which I like the fact that the theme is that since she was deaf, or so she's constantly still able to see like dead things or communicate with the god world. But I was
Yeah.
very upset that Mun Mun after this issue doesn't show up, because I was digging the idea of her having like this child ghost serving as her conscience. Like, hey, you sure you want to do that? Like,
And ironically, they just find other ways to do it, right? Because they do it later with the temple, they do it with the crow. Like they give her other things that kind of combat her and make her question her beliefs. But it almost seems like they're setting up Mun Mun to do that for the rest of the series.
right, right. So you immediately get connected to Mun Mun, but like you said, then every issue it becomes a different uh how do you say,
Entity or something.
supernatural entity to communicate with, which now looking back on it, I'm like, I like that they did that, because again, you're getting more of the Hindu aspects of the culture. Like I had no when I when I saw the ravens, I immediately thought of Norse mythology. Oh, these are the ravens of
Ah,
Odin.
yes, yes, yes,
You
yes,
know what I
yes.
mean? And it's just like, no, man, it's a whole nother that they in the Hindu religion, crows are fed rice so that they'll take the dead souls to the underworld, to the
That's
afterlife.
the price that they pay. Like that's the
They're they're
toll
they're
price.
paid.
Yeah.
That's like their toll, right? Yeah, exactly. So, but with this issue, I really thought she was gonna freaking kill this baby. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like she was
yeah. And the
holding
thing
it.
is, this is like this is very similar if you've read the Cosmic Ghost Rider.
I've
You
never
know,
read it.
it's
I've never read it, but I know. Yeah, yeah. He's sent to kill
that
baby Thanos.
that's the very first issue. And he's like, "Ah, oh, damn it, I can't kill this
Like
baby."
I can't do
Um,
it. I can't do it. You
but
know.
I what I love about this is that Mun Mun tells her what the baby's first name is, and that
Yeah.
kind of, in a weird way, personalizes the baby to Layla, and she's like, "Oh, damn, I can't kill it now."
Well, yeah, right. That's kind of like, see, like my dad. My dad grew up on a farm, and that was something he grew. I've heard this from other people as well, where it's like, yeah, don't name the animals. If you
Right.
name the animals, you become connected to them. So immediately
Yep.
she's like, "Hey, the baby's name is Darius. You can't kill it now. It's a person. It's a real thing." But it is interesting how, like her whole plan when she was a god, before she's sent back down into a human body, she's totally with it. She's like,
Yeah.
in the way she's describing it and the way she quickly devises this plot, you're just convinced, yeah, she's gonna kill this baby. She wants her
Hmm.
job. She's been deaf for all of eternity, so she wants to maintain
And
that
theoretically,
status quo.
not to be dark, but theoretically, it wouldn't even take long, right? Like in her idea of time, living as long as she has. This is like a 30-second situation. She goes to Earth, she handles this situation, again, not to be dark, in murdering this child, and then she's back to work. Like nothing ever
That's it.
happened.
That's
You
it,
know,
and not just that.
that should just be it. Like,
I
that's simply on the page in black and white, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think, I don't remember if it was in this issue or a later issue, where she talks about how many people she has led to death, and how many
Yeah.
people who only had few breaths. How many children
Yeah.
she's probably led to death. So I mean, to her, killing one baby shouldn't matter. However, she's no longer a god. She's now a
Hmm.
person. So like to have that personable connection, it's already affecting her to the point where she just can't immediately just throw this baby down to the ground to just end its existence. She's like, oh my god, like it's how hard could it be? It's just a tiny little thing, and like you said, immediately the security breaks in, and then
Because they're like, why does this lady have a baby?
right,
Why does this
right,
dead lady
this
have a
dead lady,
baby in
this lady,
her?
a half an hour ago, this lady was dead. Why is she here holding this child? What is going on? And she makes a break for him and is immediately run down in the street,
Yeah,
and I believe the god of life, Prana,
yeah.
brings her back to life. And I like the fact that even in his dialogue, because I'm like, what is his deal? Like, is he
Hmm.
still a god? Or is he
Yeah.
also like a thrown down god who's now living amongst humans? Like, I wanted to know what was his deal, but the fact was like, oh, I could only bring you back after 8 years. It's been 8 years
Right.
since you've been dead, and yeah, that little baby, he ain't a baby anymore.
Yeah.
So
But so matter of fact, he almost talks to her like she's like a delinquent little sister. Like just a can't get right sort of sibling. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, I got you. I can't believe that happened or whatever. With when you said it the way that you said it, it's kind of spelling out this idea that it's almost to say that Ram V believes to be human is to have some sort of soul that would then be weighed down by not feeding it, almost like we'll talk later on about how she then eventually ends up getting into like hedonism and just doing a bunch of randomness just to kind of get by. But there's a weight on her soul in this moment for about this child, and that weight doesn't exist when she's an immortal god. So it's almost like to be human is to have a conscience, or you know what I'm saying? It's almost to be able to discern right from wrong, to be able to understand that one shouldn't take another one's life. I think that's pretty interesting.
no, exactly. I mean, to be a god is to be above such things. It's kind of like how it was described even in this book. They're all just doing their jobs. One's,
Yeah,
the CEO's in charge. Hey, we're going in a different direction. You were reaping all these souls for all these years. We're doing something different now. Um, it's just a job. Whereas now you're cast down, but now you're filled with these emotions. So it's no longer, hey, it's no longer black and white. It's well, why am I doing this, and what's the reason to be doing this? Should I do this? It's
right.
all these questions and doubts that you have. It's it's life. It's life, right? Every morning you're filled with how many decisions to make, even in the first 10 minutes that you're awake. Welcome to
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And every decision like that'll be your last Monday of that month of that year of your life forever. Like how you handle that. Unlike when you're immortal and you could just, oh, well, that didn't go right for 1,000 years. I got another 1,000 years. All the choices are finite. All the weight of all your choices are finite. And I think that's kind of what this speaks to. Like, may we never get so disconnected from the day-to-day miracle that is life, that we believe that we're gods, and we start thinking in numbers, and really lose sight of the little miracle that is life, and the fact that we're all living and all living to be able to do the things like we're doing right now, having a conversation about living,
Yeah.
which many can't right now. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm like, okay, so what? Like, what are they trying to set up here? That fact that she might kill a toddler, like not like she might kill a kid,
Yeah.
like she don't want to
Right.
kill a baby, but she might kill a kid. Like, what are we doing here?
That's it.
Um, but Darius, as he is named, is now 8. And one day he runs away from his home to attend the funeral of a man he grew very close with. The man was named Bardan, and he used to tend the grounds at his parents' old estate. He was a kind and patient man who taught Darius many things, but was not allowed inside the house to eat, or sorry, not allowed inside the house or to eat at their table, as he was a servant. Darius didn't understand why they needed to treat such a kind man so differently and never looked at him as anything other than a member of the family. The family moved, so Darius's days with Bardon ended. One day, Bardon's daughter brings news of Bardon's death. He asked his parents, this being Darius, if he could attend his funeral, but it was deemed inappropriate. Elsewhere, Layla and a funeral crow discuss death and how it has a different meaning now that Layla is mortal. As if she takes a life in this form, it is something that she'll have to deal with. The crow takes off, and Layla walks the shores and bumps into 8-year-old runaway Darius, who is still reeling from Bardon's death. He asks how someone like that can go away forever, and Layla tells him no one is truly gone so long as they are remembered. This inspires Darius to attend the funeral, so he runs towards the procession, and Layla loses him in a crowd. At first, she's concerned he might get lost or hurt amongst the sea of humanity, but he's eventually found by his parents. The crowd pushes her towards the water, and she gets caught in a riptide just as she hears the name of the child be spoken by his grateful parents who just found him. It's Darius. Death has had a second encounter with the being that will make her obsolete, only this time that riptide costs Layla her life. She is resurrected 12 years later. This is interesting because this is Darius's first experience with death.
Right.
But also his first experience with the inequality of life, right? Like the unfairness of life. This man who works hard, who's done nothing but be good to his parents, kind of meant to eat in the back, like a handful of rice and like a jar of milk or something like that.
Right.
Told that it would be inappropriate to mourn him publicly. Like those are harsh lessons to learn at 8. You know, what are the difference between me and you at that age?
Yeah. I mean, I believe this is a reflection of the caste system that exists in India, where, you know, you everybody's at a different
unbreakable level. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, Bardhan, he is barely above a slave, it seems. But Darius loves him. You know, Darius goes there. Bardhan teaches him all about tending gardens, and Darius like just doesn't understand. Like, wait, this man works his butt off outside, tilling the land, turning over the soil, planting these trees that we then get to harvest. We get to enjoy the delicious, I believe, sopapillas fruits, the mangoes, and jackfruit. But yet he does all the work, and all he gets is like some milk and some rice.
Yeah.
And so he's just devastated when then he finds out his friend dies, but he doesn't quite understand. It's like we can't go to some farmer's funeral. Like, he's beneath us. Who cares that he was taking care of us? That's just not the way it is apparently in their society. And that's devastating. That's devastating for him. Like, wow, my friend dies. We can't mourn him. And he even feeds him. At one point, he gives him like 2 mangoes, I believe.
Yeah.
Which the family
he wants to share the fruit that because that guy cuts the fruit for them. So like that guy cuts the fruit and gives it to them, but is not allowed to eat them. And Darius is like, hey, you know, let's give it to them. And he's like, no. And he runs up and gives it to him anyway.
Right.
He doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of putting him on that track of how is he going to defeat mortality? You know, he doesn't see death here as this fair thing. You know, that's planting these seeds in his mind already of, well, death, this death wasn't fair. Like, this dude deserved a better life. So like you could see how this was already him trying to figure out a way to fight death. Yeah. Even though, and he doesn't even realize he's fighting her in the fact that like she's looking to kill him.
Yeah. So I also love this idea that when you're that age, the people that inspired you, that mentor you, that really kind of usher you into like the more mature phases of your life, they do seem invincible. So if God forbid you were ever to lose them for a thing like death, I think what he asks her does ring true. Like, how can somebody so larger than life seemingly uh just be gone? It's a question I think a lot of us have had to face, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you believe in the cycle of life, right? Like, it's unavoidable. I think everyone at one point loses somebody that means something to them. But if it happens at a young age, it feels 10 times more unfair, and it really makes you question the people. I mean, kid, it's never easy for a child to have to tackle mortality. The superheroes come back at the end of the day. The cartoon characters, after they blew up each other and hit each other with the hammers, they all come back. The video game characters all come back. But your first tackle with sometimes things going away, and is huge. And he comes around the corner of, like I said, saying something like, how can they go away forever? And it's death that literally tells him, well, he can't go away forever. Like, I can take his body. He can't go away forever so long as you remember him, which is, he, like you said, he's going to be chasing that ability to keep people around forever for the rest of his book.
Right. Exactly. All the while, death is chasing him. It's such a cool premise. I really dig it.
But also like extremely miserable about the human condition. Like, she seems to like not be digging what the almost cluelessness in which we walk around this planet, right? Because at
No,
one
yeah,
point
exactly.
she's outwardly frustrated over the lack of answers that she has, and I'm like, yeah, yep, welcome,
Yeah, right. And
welcome.
welcome to being human. You
Yes,
know,
grab a
because
t-shirt.
yeah, exactly. And then, and then, like, even as she's chasing the boy she doesn't even know is Darius,
Mhm.
which I thought was her further just going with that natural flow of what it is to be human, right?
Yeah.
You meet a kid, he seems really sad, and now you're following this kid through a crowd because you're like, wait, you're invested. You're like, wait, whose kid is this? And I don't want to see something happen to him, so let me keep following him so I can make sure he's okay. And then
Hmm.
as she then is just going along with the motions, she starts to emulate what everybody else in the crowd is doing, where they're doing these mourning rituals. She then hears his name and she, what, Darius, the Darius, to
Yeah.
which the souls of all the people who she's killed and pull her under the water.
Yeah.
She's like, damn
Well,
it.
I love how they have that big long explanation, and then they're like, or maybe it was a riptide.
Or
Like
Riptide, right, 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 right.
they say that it could be both. I think that's pretty funny there. And yeah, it's interesting that she would care about safety. She was literally the god of death, right? Like, what does it
Yeah,
matter? And well, I mean, she doesn't know it, but ultimately, if he were to trip and hit his head on a rock, that's her whole goal.
right,
Like
right.
that's her whole thing. So the irony is pretty interesting. But yeah, sometimes life is ironic. But yeah, longer resurrection time this time, 12 years.
Yep.
12 years. Um, so frustrated at how everything is going, Layla's third time on Earth is filled with hedonism and excess. We get a chapter told by the perspective of a single cigarette Layla leaves on an ashtray at a party, which serves as a stage for her campaign of debauchery. Ironically, a 20-year-old Darius is at the same party with his girlfriend Danica. He met Danica at a pillow factory where he worked with his best friend Zafar. The three of them were thick as thieves, and Darius began to date Danica. But one day, Darius and Zafar got into a big fight that got physical, and they didn't speak to each other ever again. A riot broke out in Mumbai, and the pillow factory was set ablaze, and Zafar did not make it out alive. Darius carries this constant grief of losing his best friend and never getting to make amends with him, which makes him miserable. Danica breaks up with him at the party because of this. Darius takes Layla's used cigarette and walks to the balcony to contemplate everything when he runs into Layla herself. He confesses everything about Zaf and Danica, and she tells him that life is to be lived, but he brushes her off and tosses the cigarette. Later, the building the party took place in is said to have burned down due to a lit cigarette. Lila doesn't make it out the fire, but is resurrected 16 years later by the god of life. When she tells him that she is unneeded, he confesses that he is nothing without her. He gives her the location of adult Darius should she want to visit him. What a cool convention, writing convention with the cigarette.
Yeah, it was just beautiful. Like the whole issue, you're just basically the smoke of the cigarette is taking you through the tale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not even a smoker, but I was very much wrapped into this because, like even the thought bubbles were smoky.
Yes.
It just it like Felipe's art style. If you look from like the previous issue to this issue, it just changes, in my opinion. It goes for me that the previous issues were more tame, and this
Yes.
issue is just it feels like you're you're high, because it
Yeah.
feels very psychedelic. Everything's much more loose and just flowy. You're just on this ride of the cigarettes, and like you said, it's a representation of the hedonism that she's now embracing. Right? It's been a lot longer of a time.
Yep.
She's can't find Darius probably. So in the meantime, she's just like, all right, I'm gonna just suck up this life, right? I'm gonna enjoy myself. I met a couple people here and there. I do this. I smoke here. I party here. I do all these things, and I guess if I find them, I find them. If I don't, damn. So
Yeah.
she's just enjoying herself. She's just enjoying herself, and in the meantime, she meets. She doesn't realize she's meeting Darius, but she's learning of the story of this weird love triangle, right?
Right.
And the pillow factory was a fun place to be because I really liked that the three of them turn it into their home, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it's this abandoned uh, pillow factory, there's even one sign that says, we don't make pillows, we make dreams.
Yeah.
And from that little saying, they turn it into their house where the graffiti on the walls is just hilarious because you could totally imagine that's what a bunch of 16, 17, 18 year olds would do as well. I think
Yeah.
one thing they write on the wall is dicks on walls are the purest form of
Form of
art.
art.
Yeah, you
Yep.
know what I mean? Yeah, it's just being stupid, you're being dumb kids, you're you're talking to each other as if though you have life perfectly figured out, right? Because who doesn't at the age of 17, 18, 19 years old doesn't think they have life figured out,
Mm-hmm.
and you just think life's about hanging out. And we're living in an abandoned factory. What could go wrong? Well, this love
And also
triangle,
best friends forever, right?
right? Best
Best
friends
friends
forever, exactly.
forever.
What could possibly go wrong? But here you are, right? You get into this fight with your friend.
I'm
That
asking
fight,
you like I did, like, just like that with the jumping out of the building or not. What do you think it is? Do you think it is that of he's jealous of Darius or he's jealous of Danica? Because I believe they made a point to say he could have been either one.
I mean, I I want to believe it was over Danica. I'm gonna say it's over
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but what's
He did
sad
say
though
no
is,
girls allowed. Now I'm thinking about it. He did say he wanted to sign and said no girls allowed. Maybe he did want that private pillow
uh,
factory.
yeah,
Uh,
maybe. I mean, but what's sad though is
Interesting.
you never know because, like you said, the riot happens, they burn everything down, and Darius goes with it. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Or Zaf goes with it.
Zaf. I'm sorry, yeah, Zaf
Yeah.
goes with it. So so now he comes back to it, and it's just a shadow of its former self that he's drawing into the soot, on the walls. He goes back and we don't just make pillows. It's like trying to keep alive what they had, but it's gone. It's gone, and it's
Yeah.
sad. It's very sad. And then it falls into this conversation that he has with Layla, and they don't even realize that again their lives are brought back together.
Yep.
One wants to kill the other. What they both essentially want to kill each other, right? He wants to
Yeah.
end death, and she wants to end him so that she can go about her job, hopefully. So here we are, and that cigarette ends up killing her. She's the only person that dies in the building.
Yeah. Yeah. And cigarettes do kill. So that's a funny thing, that a little joke they get back to later. But
Mhm.
one of the other things is that I want to say before I forget. Obviously, a lot of this, I guess, presentation of death leans heavily from Gaiman's death, right? From Sandman.
Sandman, right?
But I want to say, if whether or not it's a controversial take, that I love this young hot death as a like avatar idea, like
Mm-hmm.
between this book and the others, like the idea that you can there's something extremely cool about the idea that you could sit at a party at a balcony and share a cigarette with death and just have a conversation. Like there's just something really, really cool about that. If that was a story in and of itself, but that's just one chapter in this very great story. And I think it just, when you talk about fantastical, sometimes people think of like unicorns and rainbows and goblins, and sometimes fantastical is taking something that crazy, a conversation with a concept, and whittling it all the way down to them sharing a cigarette. Like that's so cool.
I no, I agree, and she is very different than the death in the game in the universe, because in the
Yeah.
game in the universe, I'm wondering. Well, no, I know, no. I mean, based off the little bit of the personality that we got from her when she was actually Death, she didn't
Yeah.
seem like Gaiman's Death either. But she's
No.
definitely not like Gaiman's Death here because she's mortal now, and she's
Yeah.
in the midst of her exploring now her newfound humanity over the last few years, and she's so even though she has this eternity's worth of experience, it's now new experience that she's having it from a human perspective. So when she's
Yeah.
having these conversations with people, it's not like the conversations Death has with her brother Morpheus in the
Right.
Sandman comics. Those sound like they should almost be forged in stone, like etched in stone. This
Yeah.
sounds like someone you're meeting at a party and you just, hey man, I just had my heart broken. What can you
Right.
tell me? And it's just like
Yeah.
take a drag of a cigarette with me and just life sucks, man. That's
Yeah.
all I got for you. You
But
know what I
I
mean?
also I also get this feeling that if she had a more personal touch to how she did her job, she would eventually become like Gaiman's death. I feel like this story almost gives her that empathy, because I do think that that's one of the things of one of the characteristics of Gaiman's death, is that she will, like she understands her job, whereas I feel like Layla in this really wrestles with it because she's almost never had to see it at this level. They almost make it a point to say like it's a very unpersonal uh activity of hers, or job of hers, taking a life, but coming now down to the level of humanity um is something that scares her, confuses her, doesn't make much sense to her, but makes complete sense to Gaiman's death, to the point that she can explain it to her brother, right? Where she's
Right,
like, "Oh, come on, these humans, I got it. Like it's just this." Um,
right.
it almost, it's almost interesting that um Layla could spend so much time doing her job and never really realizing the impact that it has until this set of this this set of experiences. You know, this is when she
I
first starts to really understand what her job is about.
right, right. And now but yet She's still curious about this Darius guy.
Yeah, yeah. But I also think that other guy, the god of life, is kind of he doesn't have to keep egging her on. Every time she wakes up, he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way."
Yeah, but I've been keeping tracks of him. Here's where
You
he
know,
lives if you want to swing by. You know.
this is when the book goes full Danny the Street, right? Because
Yeah.
Layla
Yep. Yep.
Layla goes to seek adult Darius and walks into a Chinese temple that begins to talk to her. It tells her of its owner, a kind man named Wei, who hasn't been around all day. Layla agrees to check in on Wei in exchange for directions to Darius's house. Once there, she sees photos depicting a happy and successful life for Darius, including a family. When he sees her in his home, he immediately recognizes her as the woman he met at the beach at age 8 and then at a party at age 20. He pours himself a drink and demands to know who she is and why she can't age. She explains that she was once a god, but is now trapped in mortal form. Darius knows her name to be Layla, having done research on her in order to explain how he met her twice and she never aged. He demands again she tell him what kind of god she was, and when she says death, he smashes his glass on the table. With blood dripping from his palm, he berates the former god of death for showing her face. A nearby newspaper shows that Darius lost his wife and business partner to cancer. He continues to yell at Layla about how hard it is to continue to exist after losing someone you love. He curses her for taking away someone who didn't deserve it, someone who loved him. Layla starts to fear for her life as a mortal if this is all that life is, the suffering of living a life full of questions that you will never get meaningful answers to. Suddenly, Darius' son walks into the room, so he embraces him. He vows to make sure she can never take anyone else from him again. She leaves feeling guilty over having to play a part in so much pain in the lives of those who have experienced death. She realizes Wei, the owner of the Chinese temple, is dead and tells the temple itself, who provides her with one last night of sanctuary from the upcoming storm. Unfortunately, the storm takes the temple down, and Layla herself is killed in the chaos. She's resurrected 28 years later and is told that while she might have put the idea in Darius's head of immortality, he has yet to invent it.
Yeah.
This
This.
was a big one. This is probably my favorite one.
Hmm. I can see that. I can
I
see
think
that.
it was
This was.
my favorite issue because it really showed, because it really showed the emotion from Darius. Like he wasn't play. He's played smart in this, right? He realizes who this woman is. That he recognizes her. He's been doing research on her. Like all that really made me invested. She was caught with her pants down. There's probably a better phrasing, but
Hmm.
she really was like, she really had the rug pulled out from underneath her in this moment when she thought she was going to confront him and basically tell him what the situation was.
Right. Right. No, I mean, he's much older. He's more mature. Uh, and here she is, kind of just strolling through, still,
Just
still
walking
holding
into his
on.
house. Just
Yeah.
walking
Well,
into
even
his house.
well, not just his house, but his town. Right. She walks
Oh
into
yeah,
town.
yeah.
She immediately starts communicating with the temple, which again is that it gives giving her that connection to her previous life, which you can only imagine still makes. I mean, look, she's cheated death now, what, 3 times. She still
Hmm.
has some connection to this supernatural afterlife with these gods. So part of her has to still feel like, hey, I can kind of still do what I want, right? That's there's really no consequence in her life so far.
Right.
She's lived a basically carefree existence so far, where she's got multiple chances now to do what she wants. She's still communicating with her previous world. And like now she strolls into his house with this mindset of like, who knows what she's about to do. And but Darius immediately catches on to her, like, yeah, I know who you are. I met you, and you look exactly the same. Who are you? And she confesses who she is. And even though she's got this powerful connection to this afterlife, he takes the power in these scenes. he unleashes his emotions on her that she doesn't even know what to say really, you
Hmm.
know. And she starts to fear for herself. She starts to try to run out of the house, and then she starts to feel bad when she's like, wow, he's got a kid. And now
Yeah.
she's on her own. She's running down the street, and the only place she knows to go is to back to this sanctuary, because she realizes that Wei is dead. That's the reason why he hasn't come back to the temple. So she goes back to the temple and like, all right, this is the only place of comfort I have. But then it turns out to be her tomb. It's what ends up killing her, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She listens to the temple. The temple says, "Hey, can you just leave the doors open?" Which is where I believe they say they find her body. You
Right.
know, this is her existence now. She's chasing the idea of still getting her job back, so to speak, in exchange for killing this person. But now it's longer and longer. She's seeing that this person has a life. So to
Yeah.
me, even at this point in the story, I'm sitting there going, she's only probably motivating this man to create
Oh yeah, this
immortality.
this this issue in particular, which is what is so interesting, that as soon as he embraces his son and looks back and is like, "You will never take anyone else from me," I'm like, "Oh, there it is."
There it is, right?
He only needs motive to create this. What sets a man on that path? He has to lose. He has to have felt like he's lost so much.
Right.
Also, obviously, if you've ever experienced death, it always feels incredibly unfair. There's no fair way about it. I think only when we truly find a way to be gracious and have gratitude for the time we did spend with people, we realize sometimes it's unfair in our direction, like, in a good way. Um, but he yells at her things you would yell at death if you could, when you lose somebody that's close to you. Like,
Yeah.
how do you expect me to just go on now? Like, how don't you realize, like, he says what I was talking about earlier, like, you've lost, like, he feels like she's lost the plot. You don't understand what your big sweeping changes of taking people out of this world do to the interpersonal levels. It's one of the things she was talking about when she was talking to Darius on the balcony when they're at
Yeah.
the party, where she was like, "You don't realize all the things that person was holding up until they're gone." And it's like, yeah, you know.
Hmm.
And we also know anger is definitely a stage of grief, and it feels like this is where Darius has been for quite a long time. Um, I could also imagine that this outburst is not only the grief, but the combination of the grief and the revelation that the person that has been following you around is death, right? Like that has to be the gasoline on the fire, right?
Of course, because I mean, I think he even makes mention of like, okay, every time I've seen you is right after somebody I cared about dies.
Yeah.
I met you the first time after my man Bardhan had died. Second time after
Zaf.
Zaf had
Yeah.
died, and now I see you again after my wife is killed.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell do you want from me? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like that's rough. That's rough. So
And like I
it
said,
definitely
I feel like that's what you ask of sometimes of this world when you lose so much. Like, what else? Like,
definitely like,
you know.
okay, can you not do this to me anymore, please?
And it's like,
So of
I'm
course,
about
what do you
done.
yeah, like what do you expect a person like that to then wish for? Oh hell yeah, I'm not. I'm. It's bad enough I watch you, kill people all around, kill in the world in general. But now you're throwing it in my face.
Yeah.
Every time I see you is right after I've lost someone who meant the world to me. So now, you're just bragging about it to my face. I have to deal with you somehow now.
Yeah. And then the little side plot of this seemingly sentient, or at least sentient with the energies in giving it to it by the people of the town. temple that falls because Way's not around.
Right.
It goes back to the metaphor of the invisible things being held up by people on this earth that you only figure out about once they're gone. I thought it was a really touching sort of, because even she says, like, I think it fell because they didn't want to stand up anymore.
Yeah.
Which is almost a metaphor for how Darius has been living his life. He's almost gonna get a weird twisted sense of purpose because of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's sometimes what it takes.
Yeah. So our final chapter begins when a young girl finds an injured puppy and brings it to a crazy old man rumored to be able to bring things back from the brink of death. The old man accepts the challenge. Meanwhile, Layla travels to see Darius one last time and begs him not to create immortality. The old man stitches the puppy up, but while escorting the little girl out, he notices a familiar face. It's Layla, and the old man is identified as just the man she's looking for. He almost expects this visit and welcomes her inside. First, he admits to looking for her after yelling at her all those years ago. He felt bad about how things ended. She tries to apologize for everything he's been through. When he realizes she's come to stop him from creating a form of immortality, he laughs and explains he already did. He invented immortality at the age of 49. That night, he celebrated by treating himself to things he hadn't in years. He packed up the gift and placed it in a shoebox. Layla is shocked that he has such a thing and has never used it. Suddenly, Darius changes the subject and invites her outside with him. They go sit by the beach and watch the sunset, and he confesses that he's dying. The doctors find a tumor in his brain, and it's too big to operate on. They gave him 6 to 10 months to live, and he's on month 14. He tells Layla that after his wife passed from cancer, he became obsessed with defeating death and developed an addiction that caused him and his son to become estranged. Before he goes, all he wants is to see his son again. He basically says that the key to living in general is understanding that every breath is a miracle. We shouldn't obsess over the fact that we have to die more so than appreciate the fact that we get to live and experience and just be. Layla would visit Darius every day for a while after that, and they tended to broken creatures together in the hopes that they can give them a few more chances at life. When Darius becomes too ill, he asks his son to come see him. He never once considers using the gift of immortality to change his own fate. Instead, he gives the gift to Layla, who places it in a box in the water on the shore. And then I wanted to actually read this last bit because I don't think I could actually do it justice. But it says, we go back to a bunch of unanswered questions. Was Darius Shah truly visited by death in his last days? Did that mean Laila Starr had her job back? Or did life resign itself to death? And did Layla and Prana set out to new beginnings on a beach somewhere in Goa? Perhaps such things are better left in closed boxes and set adrift out into the sea. Perhaps it is enough to remember at stories and the miracle that it was simply to have lived. Boom, boom, boom. Deep.
Yeah. Yep.
It's deep stuff, and it is true, in a lot of ways. I think one of the things that's interesting and that people say all the time is, like, we as humans try to control time, and we can't because we don't know how much of it we have, right? So so we try. We try to assign numbers to where the sun is and days and all that other kind of stuff there, but we don't know how much of it in total we have. So once you kind of realize that, that becomes the ultimate currency above everything else. And I think Darius at the end of days realized that how much time he had with those before he lost them, but then how much time he lost with people who were on this planet, that he kind of chose to give that time away by obsessing over one day not having time. Isn't that interesting? uh, in his pursuit to make sure he had all the time in the world, he basically lost all the time in the world, or lost the time that matters with his son. And it's some deep stuff. Do you really think he invented immortality?
I believe he did.
Yeah.
I truly believe he did. But in creating it, realize what's the purpose of this, right?
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, he quickly afterwards says he goes out and he just like lives life,
Yeah.
and he realizes, kind of like he just realizes that that's immortality, not actually getting to live forever, but just living and creating
Yeah.
memories. You know what I mean? Because I, think of Layla, right? In time on eternity, what reflection does she have for what she did for all that eternity before she became mortal, right?
Nothing.
I mean, it seemingly seems like nothing, right? She's just holding on to, which is well, it's kind of interesting, right? Is she's
Yeah.
holding on to the fact that she had a job,
Yeah.
right? How often do people say, you know, your life is not your job, go live your life?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like she was totally defined just by this role she had, but then once she regains mortality, it's like now you're living, now you're you have this finite amount of time, do something with it, go live life, go experience different things, go see what the world has to offer, talk to people, get to understand this beautiful gift that is this very brief life that we get. And I think that's something that she really gets to experience when she meets him in his final I guess days or weeks maybe that she experienced
Yeah.
with him in the end, where he's like, yeah, I invented it and it didn't serve a purpose except for me to just put it in a box, leave it there, and just ref- think now about how I could help just a small part of my community, which was saving these animals in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and all the while reflecting on, man, you know, there are so many things I wish I would have done, because in I mean, like even if he gives himself immortality, and let's say even if he turns around and gives it to his son, that still won't give him
He
back
still
the
don't give him the time
time,
back. Yep. Still don't
right?
get the
That,
time back. Yep.
you know, so it's just it's kind of ill. So it's like that's why life is such this precious thing, because it's such a finite amount of time. Make the most of it, have no regrets, you know, live, love, laugh, as people love to say,
Yeah.
and just I guess until your dying breath, just try to even fix those things that you can still fix, which he does. Right in the end, that's the last phone call I think he makes. Hey son, come see
Yeah.
me, please. Let's
Yeah.
let's work on this last thing, so I can close the door on you. You can close the door on me, and we can both go about our lives, and I can die with a sense of peace. And that's what he gets. You know, that's what he gets, and it's a beautiful little death.
Yeah. I also love that it's she spends some quiet time with Layla on the beach, and it's almost less about this tool to create immortality, more so than it is about like moments like that kind of make you feel immortal. Because I do think there are times in the world where all the stars align, they cross, right? There's times you can even remember, like there's nights that felt like forever in a good way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, forever is perspective, and so if you want to live forever, you have to live all the way. Perspective is an intensity, or forever is an intensity, not a length of time. Does that make sense? I just made that up, and I don't know if that makes sense. But you get what I'm
No,
saying? Like
I get
forever is
it.
an
I get it.
intensity. It's the intensity in which you live life. It's not. It doesn't matter how long you live your life. It matters how much of life you live.
Exactly. No, no,
Sounds
exactly.
smart in my brain. I don't know if it's coming out if it's coming out
No, no,
exactly how
I
I
hear
want
you,
it to.
man. I hear you. I hear you, right? It says all about seizing the day, right? Making the most
Yeah,
of that time. Because if you have all the time in the world, then who cares that there's no reason to embrace, there's always tomorrow, right? When you're immortal, right? There's
yeah,
always tomorrow. Whereas for us mortal beings, we don't have that luxury. It sometimes is about, hey, it has to happen tonight, or you know what, this could be our last night, or let's make it today, because it might not come tomorrow, right? So
yeah.
that's the beauty in it. That's the beauty in it. So
I think it's also kind of cool that Layla got to spend time with him with the animals, kind of seeing that fleeting nature of things right there on the line between life and death.
yeah,
Sometimes you give it all the prayer, the treatment and everything, and it works out, and sometimes you do all that and it doesn't, and it really is just like a light switch, like it's out of our control. But we don't stop trying, and that's basically all he's saying. Um, don't don't stop living life with the idea that one day we're gonna die, like that, which makes a lot of sense. I think people sometimes wrestle with mortality all the time, right? Like you said, we think about all the money we have to save and how many years we have to work, et cetera, and so forth. We can really lose sight of the little things. And it's usually the things like just peace of mind, family, love, that really make us feel like we could do this forever. It's those moments, not the ones where you're saving a bunch of money or, working overtime and stuff. Unless you
yeah,
love what you do. And then, then that works there.
yeah.
But
But I
well,
mean, do you think she got her job back?
I almost wonder if she wants her job back. I don't know. I don't know if she wants her job back. And that was one of the things she said as well, right? When they have like a nice little moment where she's heading to old man Darius's house, and she's thinking to herself like, maybe I don't even get my job back. Maybe this is what I do. And I don't know when you've gotten that close, when you realize how the sausage gets made, right? Can you go back? If you're the person who literally works at the butcher shop, but one day you get Dr. Doolittle powers, do you still work at the butcher shop? I don't know.
Ooh,
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if she continues to do this, and or maybe if she does it, she's more empathetic, as to how she does it. But I think it's an interesting question. What do you think?
I part of me wants to say she takes the job back
Hmm.
because she's kind of tired of life. You know, she's
Yeah.
now gone through all these aspects of life with Darius. She's kind of already experienced all these things. So now it's like, man, I'm kind of tired of these emotions.
Yeah.
Let me go
She
back
got
to
Dr.
work.
Manhattan style. Dr. Manhattan
Yeah,
style. She's like, yeah, I'm,
yeah,
I'm off of this.
yeah. I'm done. I'm done with this. So I could totally see that. I could totally see that.
What's interesting, that brings together the whole idea of mortality in a nutshell as well, right? It's like, for good or bad, you don't got to do this forever. uh, and I think that's something that she couldn't even stand doing for a couple of years. I also like that every time she died, there was a time jump because again, like you were just saying, it's time you can't get back. You lost that time trying to convince Darius, you those 8 years, then those 12 years, and then those 18 years, et cetera, and so forth. Um, that's something you can't control. So I really like that it does pose these questions because I think it kind of works on your perspective of life and death, your perspective of what all this means and what all this means when it stops meaning. And any book that kind of challenges you or raises these questions and allows you to have these kind of conversations is a book worth reading, worth recommending. And I hope it gets all the success that it wants. I could totally see this being like a quirky Amazon Prime TV show. You know, I could totally
Mm,
see I could totally see this working as that, but it doesn't have to be anything other than this. It doesn't have to exist as anything other than this wonderful 5 issue story. beautifully written and beautifully illustrated, that at all parts was able to display the all the many ways we deal with death, and it goes from, the anger we feel like when we feel like when it's unfair, and the hopelessness we feel like when we feel like um we can't change anything, and then the almost the acceptance and peace we feel like when we realize that it's not really up to us to change anything. So it's us just to kind of experience it. You get that all in this little book, and most people don't reach those real life platitudes, and until it's too late, kind of stuff. So I like that they gifted it all this in a book, because I do think that it will cause people to reflect and really question what they're doing with their time here, because we only get so much.
Definitely. And that's why I love books like this. I love indie books because how many stories from the big two are going to leave you like this?
Yeah.
I just not very many,
Right.
or unfortunately, when you read stories in the big two, even if let's say in the pages of say a Thor story, right, there was something like this for a 5 issue arc,
Yeah.
because there's so much Thor before and so much Thor after, it gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
It would get lost in the shuffle. Whereas because this exists on its own and it's its own thing, for those who have read it, and I believe as more and more people read it, and it just becomes this, hey, have you ever read, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr? Or have you ever just read Layla Starr? Yeah, yeah. Like, I think it immediately sets off that light bulb and that head to heart connection, because this story is so different. And that's why I
Yeah.
love finding these stories, because even though it's just this short little 5 issue story, it tells so much. And like I said, I already want to reread it again, just because it's so good, and there's all these little details. And like I was saying earlier, having to then go, all right, who are these gods? Like, I'm not familiar with the Hindu gods like this. So okay, oh, this person represents this. Oh, this person represents life. That's why he's able to do this. And okay, oh, it's so fascinating just learning about this culture and how within the story why certain things are happening. So it was such a new story, and I'm
I,
really liking it.
I think you're really kind of explaining the fatigue that I'm feeling, or I'm kind of like circling around this idea that um, what I'm actually exhausted with is the, like, and now what? What's next of it all? I feel like we've gotten to this level with comic book media where they feel like they don't have to create a singular complete film. It's always going to be left with sequel bait. It's always going to be left with unsolved answers. It's always going to be left with some bigger villain, some bigger tease of some bigger thing. Because the question is always, how do we keep the ball dribbling? With some of these indie titles, it doesn't have the fear of that job. It can tell a complete, concise story and work towards an ending that it had always meant to have. Um, there are shows that don't make as much money as Days of Our Lives, that has been going on for decades, right? But you might remember their plot points a bit more because you spent such finite time with them. And the show came in and came out and left you with something. I've been watching wrestling for 30 years, and there's still something uh, in television, certain short 3-season television shows that have rocked my core because it got all its message out in one go, and you got to absorb it, and it got to sit with you, and it got to become a classic without immediately trying to be topped, immediately trying to be sequelized, immediately trying to be spun out into something else. Things are not left alone. Things are not created to be meant to stand alone, and then when they're made, they're not left alone long enough for me to kind of sit with them. And this book sits with me. It's something that not only am I going to remember, but I'm going to recommend when I hear somebody kind of having trouble with tackling the themes in a book like this. And that's the kind of gift that art should be. It should be something that the artist and writer give us, and we interpret and we pass on, and it's through those interpretations that we're connected. And it's through books like this that we're connected, and it's through reading books and having a podcast like this that we stay connected. So I'm really appreciative of stories like this, because I understand how hard of a task it is to be a part of the big two or be writing for some of the most iconic characters in history. I'm not discrediting any of that. But my exhaustion comes from there always being something more or bigger. Sometimes I just want the sandwich, I don't need to be at
Yep.
the buffet constantly looking at every other plate there. I just want to be focused on my very small, concise story.
I totally agree. Totally agree. But that's
Yeah.
why it's fun to find these stories, to find these, because another writer who I'm really starting to compare him to is Jeff Lemire, someone
Yeah.
we've spoken about a lot, and
Yeah.
he writes stories that I feel are just as good as what he's writing, and they just have this depth to them. But if you just keep reading those nice short concise stories, they're so good, they're so emotionally hitting,
Yeah.
that you don't venture vent don't I'm not saying don't forget about the big two. Everybody,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
love your Avengers, love your Justice League, your Supermans, your Spider-Mans, love those. But when you have a chance to read something like this, just do it. Take time out of those crazy stories you're reading, and read something a little bit more grounded, something finite, something that you can read probably in less than an hour, and I guarantee you it's going to pay off. You're going to be like, wow, what is this? Who wrote this? Where did this story come from? Because it's nothing like you're reading from the big two. So
Right.
enjoy it while you can.
Yeah. It's unique. It's unique, and I think what's also pretty cool about it is that it is short. Like it because of its length, you can't go into it without purpose. You know, like if you got 50 issues, they tell hey, you got 50 issues on Dead Man. Some of those issues ain't gonna have purpose because you got 50 issues. When you
Mm-hmm.
got five, every one of those is with purpose. You got one story, one chance, one in and out, and these stories are usually green lit because the premise and the heart, what's behind what's on the cover, is so big that once you get into these stories, like you see these covers and you see these premises and they're interesting, but that's not what the book is about. I don't know if I'm coming across the way I want to, but it's like I feel like the book that was sold to me is this quirky kind of comedy of death being trapped in a human body, trying to stop the person that's gonna get her fired or keep her fired, right? And it turns into like this one person being born and how they've experienced death throughout their lives and how they're eventually able to come to terms with their own mortality.
Yeah.
Like that's two completely different things. And sometimes they that's what they sold me the quirky death comedy, but I got the bonus of everything else. Sometimes you're only gonna sell Superman. That's it. There is no bonus, and that's
Right.
fine because you came to buy Superman. You know.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, really, really like this story. Really, really highly recommend it if you can tell already. But yeah, it's definitely something that you need to experience. And I'll be checking out this guy, Ram V. I want to see what his detective comics look like, to be honest.
Yeah, I would.
Uh,
If you're a Batman person, definitely pick up his Detective Comics stuff. If you like more of this kind of stuff, These, like I said, that his early work on at Vault, These Savage Shores, that is another just one and done story, and that's it. I think it's like 5 or 6 issues. If you want something that has a little bit more story to it, with a character that you're a bit more familiar with, his Swamp Thing run, fantastic. It is it is very gory. It's very just very horror based, but still has that human aspect to it. So if you like that, I would
That's
recommend
classic
that.
Swampy, right?
Yeah,
Like when done
exactly,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you like symbiotes, try his Venom and Carnage stuff. It didn't really float my boat, but if you like it, if you like that stuff, give it a try. But if you just want good, solid stories, The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, baby, give it a shot. As well as, like I said, These Savage Shores. And if you like something like this, another book called Day Tripper that came out a few years ago by Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. Gabriel Ba, who's the artist on the Umbrella Academy
Hawkeye.
with,
Oh, no, okay, I got it wrong.
yeah, Hawkeye
Yeah,
was
yeah.
David Aja. David Aja.
Got yeah, yeah.
But Gabriel Ba, he was the artist on Umbrella Academy.
Yes.
And so if you dig that art style and you dig this kind of a story, Day Tripper. It's a little bit longer. I think it's
Mhm.
7 or 8 issues. Um, it was I want to say a Vertigo book, but
Right.
it's like the same concept, where almost same concept, where a person who he dies at different points in his life, but depending on when he dies, it of course then changes the whole reflection on his life until
Yeah.
and then the way it ends is it just the way it ends is such a trip. So hence
A day
Day
trip.
Tripper. There it is. So I would highly recommend that if you like these kind of existential, life in thought invoking stories, then I would recommend that.
I Day Tripper was the first comic um recommended to me after this comic.
Oh,
Like the from
perfect.
other sites were like this is uh you know very akin to Day Tripper. So if you
Well, there you go.
dug this, dig Day Tripper.
There you go.
Um Yeah, and there we go. What a hell of an episode covering this terrific book. Go out there and yeah, take chances on different books. We only have so much time and art should move you. So if you're reading or watching something that isn't, don't waste your time. Pick up something that's really going to affect you because it's all out there, man. People are making these stories. They are creating, um, new artists, writers are being born every day, inspired by their very particular perspectives, and you never know when a new trailblazer is going to come out and come out swinging. I love that we jump from these what would you call them, like greats. We go back a lot of times and look back at some of the um writers and artists that we've lost, names that are in the hollow hall of legends, that sometimes when you are watching like a modern legend or someone who kind of eventually achieve those heights, it's kind of breathtaking because you're watching them as they work. You're not reassessing their stuff after they've gone. And because we are living in their time, you can almost kind of see the things around them and us that have influenced their work. So yeah, go ahead, take a chance, and find the book for you because it's definitely out there. And in the meantime, we'll be finding every other book that we can under the sun and every other movie and every other piece of TV as we continue our road to 300 episodes of the Major Issues Podcast. Every single episode of the Major Issues Podcast is available wherever podcasts are found. That's Podbean, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, the Apple Podcast app, TuneFind, YouTube, Spotify, and more. But if you want the one-stop shop for everything Comic Book Click, go to comicbookclick.com. Every episode of the Major Issues Podcast is already on there, including articles written by us. You can get to our TeePublic store by going to comicbookclick.com, and if you purchase anything there, we get a kickback. You You can also get to our Patreon by going to comicbookclique.com. And for as little as 10 cents a day, $3 a month, you can help support us and afford the hardware and the software we need to continue to provide free content as we do each and every week. Knock on Vibranium. We're all over social media, and our numbers are growing. We're on track to double our numbers from last year in a single year, and that's thanks to you guys out there liking, sharing, supporting. It's been a blast, and so I want to thank all those that follow us. But if you're looking to follow us, you can go to facebook.com/comicbookclique, Instagram @comicbookclique, or you can use the hashtag comicbookclique to talk about the newest, hottest, latest, and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. We're at Major Issues CBC on Twitter and at Major Issues CBC on Twitch. I'm going to probably start twitching again the closer we get to Spider-Man. I'm very excited for that game. It looks really, really cool. But yeah, make sure you're tuned into all the things that we're doing here. It's been a hell of a run, and like I said, we're getting inching ever so closely to episode 300, and it's thanks to not only everyone who listens to this podcast and shares it, who goes on iTunes and gives us 5-star ratings so that we can find other like-minded members of the cult of the Clique, but it's with guests like you, B-Roke, who come in with enthusiasm, with knowledge, ready to have a good time, ready to talk the things that we love, like comic books and comic book media. So it's good. It's thanks all around to everyone who helps make this exactly what it is. But get on the bandwagon before the bandwagon becomes full, because I've been to the future where I do become the latest and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media, but I can't tell you how we do it because I'll mess up the timeline. And then next thing you know, $7 Productions wants to produce The Many Deaths of Laila Starr with The Rock's daughter in it, and I don't think that's a good idea.
No.
So don't let that happen. Don't let that happen, people. Don't tell us how we do it. Just get on the bandwagon. Let's go to the moon and continue to do what we do as part of Comic Book Clique. You got anything, B-Roke?
Hey, just thank you for having me once again. Let's keep this going. I'm
with it.
Very excited for episode 300. I would love to do. Yeah, I mean, George, that is a testament to your will and your commitment to this. You brought a lot of us along for the ride. So if you would keep the train coming, and I would love if we can do like a big jam session. It's a big celebration. It's a big celebration.
I would love to see what we could do, and it'd be cool to see how many people we can get on board. Because we're only going up from here. This is just a beautiful stop to celebrate how far we've come, but there's still a lot more to go. So make sure that you guys stay with us for the entirety of this journey, because you're not going to want to miss it. But my name is George Serrano, aka The Don.
And I am Alex Garcia, aka B-Roke for days.
And this has been our recap and review of The Many Deaths of Laila Starr. And remember, regardless of what you believe in, remember life is precious. Remember, life is a gift. That's why time is also a gift, and that's also why they call it the present. Make sure that you know that we care about you. You are a member of the Clique, and most importantly, as we say each and every week, you, yes, you are worthy.